Halloween is almost here, which means that this week's episodes will involve things that relate, at least to some extent, to the spookiest time of year. First up, Tuesday's short. What could be more eerie than light being emitted after what sounds like the crack of a bone? And what goes better with Halloween than masks, or in this case, Jim Carrey's The Mask? This is the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source. The first segment was recorded with Sandra of Woodman's Brewery in Bristol, New Hampshire, while she was visiting Loaded Question in Portsmouth. She was drawn to the light-up glow stick that I brought, like a 90s kid is drawn to, well, a light-up glow stick. Take a listen to the many memories these little sticks of light stirred up, including their uses at Halloween time. Sitting down here with Sandra. And come on up to the mic. And before we jump into the light up that you selected for your primary source, so when you woke up this morning, the last thing you had on your mind was that some guy was going to ask you to sit down and be on his podcast about everything and anything, right?
You know, that was one thing that entered my mind. I thought it could happen.
You never know, right? Because Portsmouth, you never know. It's one thing after another. So do you make similar kinds of beers at your brewery as here at Loaded Question?
Yeah, we have kind of across the board. We got an IPA, a pale ale. We kind of do some pretty like traditional styles. We just started getting into some more like lagers. We have a Pilsner, a Japanese style Pilsner. Kind of experiment with some like local ingredients.
Yeah.
We have like a maple cream ale, which is pretty popular.
Ooh.
And we use fresh local maple syrup.
That's the way to go.
Yeah.
You can't get... I like one of my favorite cream ales is from Genesee Brewery out in Rochester, New York, just because it's so classic Jenny cream ale. And it's funny that you didn't select, I have a bottle over there of a Chinese beer from 1979. I don't think Chinese beer is really as popular nowadays as if it ever even caught on. I don't know if it did. But what you selected tonight to talk about is a thing that personally... As soon as I saw that, and I only picked it up a few weeks ago, I was up in Gorham, Maine, Goodwill by the Pound, which is, for somebody that collects random stuff like me, it's a perfect place to go because it's just, have you ever been up there?
Gorham?
Yeah, to Goodwill by the Pound.
No, but it sounds amazing.
They have, for lack of a better word, they just have troughs full of stuff that Goodwill thrift stores couldn't sell.
Yeah.
And they have everything from shoes and clothes, but just random stuff. And then when you go to buy it, they weigh it out and you pay by the pound. So you can drive out with, depending on what it is, a truckload of stuff like $30.
So it's a treasure hunt.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Love it.
And so I found that there a few weeks ago, and as soon as I picked it up, I could smell firework residue, because that light up, consistent with 4th of July. So the question that I selected for us to analyze this with is, what ideas or behavior does this convey? From just the box alone? What ideas or what behavior does it kind of get across?
I think it's like being like young and having fun, whether you are young or not.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of just exploring. We used to use these when we were playing, not just with 4th of July, and we did flashlight tag, neighborhood flashlight tag.
I do, back when kids played outside.
Yeah. I'm a 90s baby, so that's what we did. We had neighborhood block parties, we had flashlight tag, and we would throw some of these exact light ups and throw them on our necks, put them in our pockets, whip them at each other, whatever. And like run across the lawns of all of our like friends' parents. It
was always such an important thing too, to be the one to crack it open.
Yeah, that's the best.
You couldn't let somebody else just do it. And I don't know if it says on the box what color it is.
Yeah.
Does it? Because I feel like there was always some kind of air of mystery too. When you
red. Yeah.
Oh, that one's red. Okay, because I remember. It was usually 4th of July or sometime in the summer. They would just be distributed out by mom or dad, and you'd open it up, like a popsicle. But instead of course, eating it, you would snap it and then just watch it immediately get...
You shake it right
you gotta shake it up to make sure...
Yeah.
And then usually by the end of the night it started fading, and that was always kind of like it was almost like a sand,
time to go home.
Timekeeper. Yeah, like okay, our glow sticks are winding down. We're all getting tuckered out here.
If you keep a couple extra in your pocket for when it starts winding down,
right?
Then you'd be golden.
Then you could.
Then you pop it out again.
Because there was always the kid that had a necklace just full of them. It looked like they were.
Yeah.
I remember, so that was 80s, 90s. That was like standard fare. You always had the light ups and all that.
Yeah.
But I feel like by the early 2000s, those became part of rave culture.
Oh, yeah.
And it was funny because I had a friend of mine who, I don't think he really knew what a rave was, or exactly what went on at a rave, because he would tell me over AOL Instant Messenger, hey, I'm going outside. My friends and I are going to rave. We have some glow sticks. And they would just take videos of each other, like spinning those things around in all these directions. And I'm like...
Yeah, the ones you use are like necklace, and you can like make them bigger, put a crown on your head.
And they were doing all sorts of tricks. And I'm like, I don't think you know what a rave is, honestly. I think, you're missing a key component of being at a nightclub until 4 a.m. and loud music and ecstasy and all that. But hey, whatever. If you think that's fun, play with your glow sticks,
We made our own rave. We have my college friends. One of them has a lake house, and we started breaking out the glow sticks and having glow stick parties.
Yep.
We make our own raves.
Yeah.
On the deck outside, and
those are, you said you were a baby of the 90s, right?
Yeah.
You grew, and so it's like, of course you're going to grow,
with glow sticks.
Adapt something from your childhood as you get older. You're not going to just totally reject it because those things are so cool.
Oh yeah, we have the 90s playlist playing and break out the glow sticks, and now we have beer, so that's fun.
I know now that's okay, and nobody's going to get in your case about that.
Yeah.
And would you say that this particular item, like as soon as you saw it, just brought back a rush of memories? It's just
totally.
it's and it's amazing how that happens, isn't it? That you can just stumble across something that you kind of forgot about or kind of took for granted, but and that one's a genuine article. It's not from nowadays. It's definitely
look at his sunglasses.
Look at the kid.
He's like got the hair that little comb
it's all
over.
slick back
like
and
the Leo look, the Leo DiCaprio in Titanic. Very cool.
I think that's what they were definitely going for, was saying if you want to be cool like Leonardo DiCaprio, who he could have used a glow stick after the Titanic sank.
Face. He looks like a dreamboat. I mean, look at that. You want to be cool like that kid.
And then after he did that photo shoot, he guest starred on Home Improvement and was JTT's friend and Teen Beat and all that, right?
All the. It's funny right here. It says it's good for trick or treat with safety.
That's right. That's coming up. That's coming up soon. And I remember the McDonald's. The buckets, the glow in the dark trick or treating buckets.
I still have this in my parents' attic.
And if you didn't have that to glow, you would stick one of these things for extra measure.
I forgot about that.
And so I mean, I feel like some scientist came up with the concoction to make this thing glow, and he probably had some kind of vision for it, like saving stranded pilots that got out to sea or something like that. And somebody's like, no. Let's bring it to the kids. Like they get more use out of it. Those pilots can use flare guns. These kids, they're going trick or treating. They're having 4th of July. They might get lost in the woods. Let's make the light up for them.
Kick the can.
Right, kick the can.
Yeah, we did kick the can.
So it's amazing just how that one. And you know what I'm gonna do, because that one appeals to you so much. You're gonna go home with that tonight.
No
okay,
way.
You get to keep the light up, and I'm assuming it's still good. I don't know if those things go bad or not. Please let me know.
I will use this, and I'll have 90s music playing in the background.
That's right. You got to put on some Alanis Morissette or something.
Oh yeah, Jagged Little Pill.
Jagged Little Pill and
Spice Girls. I was really into Spice Girls.
Yeah,
that's kind of my jam.
It's amazing just how that thing will light up an entire stream of memories. 90s nostalgia is so big right now, isn't it? It's
Pokemon.
Some are hit or miss, to be honest with you. I don't know if you've seen some of the series. There's one called Yellow Jackets.
No,
that one,
should I watch it?
That hits the mark perfectly. It's set in 1996, and they get it down. Like, so, I was born 81. So the 90s to me are ages 10 through 18.
Yeah.
So a lot
I
of
would have been
things.
10 at 96.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So by the time that decade was over, you were moving on to a different phase in your life, and so you saw that time period different from me. Yet we have this meeting place.
We had a converging. We converged
Right,
a little
these
bit.
kinds of things,
passed. We passed.
So we may have seen these, but shows like that do a nice job of not pouring it on too thick with the 90s references, but also not letting you forget that that's the time period it's in. Nobody has a cell phone, or if you do, you're like the rich kid. And,
and you're instant messaging, and you're doing dial-up, right?
Yep.
The crazy dial-up sound.
Every time somebody comes up with...
someone's on the phone, get off the phone.
Yeah. I remember learning the etiquette of internet from AOL Instant Messaging. I didn't have it at my house. My friend had it.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was so cool when he's like, you want to come over after school? And I'm like, can we use the internet? And he's like, yeah. And we would do the whole dial-up, and sometimes it wouldn't even work. It would make all sorts of whining noises, which, side note to anybody listening in, one of the things in the mystery bag is actually an AOL startup kit on a disc, on a floppy disk. But wild. I remember like chatting with girls from school on AOL Instant Messenger under his screen name, and and then the next day I was like, hey, it was pretty cool talking to you online, and they just kind of looked at me like, no, we don't. What happens on the internet stays on the internet. Even in the early days of it, I was learning that. And then
Did you have like your profile, like where you had like a mysterious emotional quote?
I did not. I just used his. So like and I had to make it. I'm like, this is Eric from school, And but after a while, walking up and down the dorms, I went to college in 1999. Yeah. And that was the sounds of AOL Instant Messenger echoed through the dorm rooms. Dorm halls. Like, blue, blue, blue.
Yeah, everyone logging on, doing their away messages.
Welcome. All that. And people getting all clever and creative with their away messages. And, if you use like the percentage sign, whoever typed to you, their name would come up like, hi, so-and-so, you missed me.
Friend fights, like drama happen over profiles and name, like massive fights.
It's because, again, that convergence, we weren't ready for it. I mean, nowadays you can text and message, and sometimes things will be taken the wrong way, but it has so many additional, images that you can put in and emojis that...
I mean, it's still pretty terrible because it's a lot at young minds' fingertips.
Right.
I feel like we were figuring it out. So it was like we were having fun with it.
We blazed the path.
Yes.
We were trailblazers.
Yeah.
And as we led the way, we had our light up glow sticks.
That was
right. That was our torch that we.
Hold that. Everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna be safe.
That was our thing.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for gaining the courage to come on up here and.
Love it.
See, nobody's paying attention, so don't even worry about it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. 1994's The Mask is part of the first wave of Jim Carrey movies, which made his highly physical and exaggerated comedy acting iconic. It also marks the beginning of my guest, Shyla, becoming annoyed with him. Seriously, though, there are many aspects about the time period in which this movie was released that are embedded in the high-energy comic book comedy. Shyla to the EPS podcast, and you can sit anywhere you want. Okay. And she decided to talk about, because she's not a fan of Mr. Jim Carrey and The Mask, we're going to talk about...
I like Jim Carrey, just not The Mask.
Okay, so I'm actually kind of the other way. I like The Mask, but I'm not a huge fan of some of his other stuff, so we're going to have a nice argument, perhaps, but what I decided to choose for the question is, what material is it made from, and or how was it made? And so that could be looked at in a couple different ways. I don't know the exact materials made, to make a movie necessarily, as far as like the actual film strip and the VHS tape and everything. But I do know that The Mask is based on a comic book by the same name from Dark Horse Comics, and it was pretty popular. Well, actually, it wasn't very popular because Dark Horse, being an independent comic company, put out a lot of comic books that were not Marvel or DC or
I was gonna say I'm not that familiar with anything other than Marvel and DC.
Yeah, so this movie came out in an era where I don't think it was far too expensive to make movies about Spider-Man and all the main characters. So New Line Cinema, who made the movie, wanted to get something kind of on the cheap, and so they went for a lesser-known character like The Mask, who fit up-and-coming star Jim Carrey's personality just perfectly. He was really the only
Cameron Diaz.
And Cameron Diaz. I think that was like one of my favorite roles. First roles, and she did the singing in that movie too.
And she was a knockout
at the Coco Bongo Club. So, tell me, what is it about this movie that rubs you the wrong way?
I think it's the Jim Carrey's "alrighty then" type of thing that I'm not in love with. But I was saying that the reason I chose it is because it still does have a fond memory for me.
Okay.
Because I connect it to a season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, the TV show.
The TV show. Now, they had a musical episode called Once More with Feeling.
Okay.
And the villain looked like Jim Carrey from The Mask.
But it wasn't him.
No.
Okay.
But that's how I connect it, and that's why I have a positive thought otherwise, and I just picture that instead of Jim Carrey. I know the lyrics to most of the songs in that episode, if you would like to clip it, but otherwise, my family loved The Mask, but something about that character was just too much for me. But I loved Cameron Diaz in that movie.
Yeah. She did a fantastic job. And if I'm not mistaken, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I know that the TV show is based on the movie, but I want to say that the movie is also based on a comic book.
I don't know, but I do know that they made Joss Whedon wanted to make Buffy the Vampire Slayer into this TV series that turned into something entirely different than what he wanted. And for me, growing up in the 90s, it was a strong, powerful female lead.
Right.
And maybe that's why I liked Cameron Diaz, is because, you know, I focus on the female leads.
I was going to say, the movie The Mask is, just like the title, kind of more than meets the eye. Throughout, as you're watching it, you get faked out a lot, because the Cameron Diaz character, when she's introduced in that movie, you assume that she is going to be using her sexuality to help the bad guys, as she does at the beginning. That's how she, they get the
power we
clue
have
to the bank, and then when he meets kind of the mousy, the Yasmin or Amy Yazbek's character, who's the mousy journalist, and so, oh, you're Mr. Nice Guy, and you assume that that's the one that he's going to end up with, and not the other way around. But then she's the one that ends up stabbing him in the back, and Cameron Diaz's character comes back and redeems herself, and is. That's
probably why I loved it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, there's so many layers to it, because there's the actual physical mask that he wears, but there's other masks as well thrown in the movie. Like the main bad guy holds up, the gangster's face and pokes holes through the eyes with his cigarette and holds it up for just a second, saying that's who he wants to be.
Yeah.
And there's like the Ben Stein's character is, talking about the masks that we wear metaphorically and all that.
I suppose if I got into it, then I would appreciate it more. I think I thought of it more from like the female character perspectives, because but when you say that, I guess I didn't.
But she even wears a mask throughout. I mean, not physically, but I mean, like just that, because again, she gives off, and the whole movie and the setting of it, it's set modern day, but it has a total mid 20th century vibe to it. You know, there's zoot suits and there's those kind of like the big band music and stuff like that. So it's kind of like,
okay, I did like the eccentric scenes.
Yeah.
I did like the eccentric dance scenes, but
like, what time period is this really? It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
And you know, so it's kind of like, is this nowadays or not? You know, and that I think kind of helped the movie with that, like, timelessness of it, of being able to say, like, yeah, we're always, you know, in that kind of like wearing a mask of the time period. And I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I guess what I was going for is that
it's a comedic masterpiece. I do have to say that, because you know what, though, it is still funny. I may not have appreciated it at the time.
Yeah.
But it is, because it's still funny to this day.
Because but you're right. It is kind of heavy doses of Jim Carrey. You know, they made it because of him.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have made it with anybody else. But they dug this character up out of the comic books because Ace Ventura, right? He was on his skyrocketing to popularity, and they're like, let's pull this story out of the back pages and put it on him. But isn't that consistent with the time period too of the mid 90s?
They have the same kind of premises.
Yeah.
The character typecast.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Wrong way.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was starting to get typecasted, and I get sick of that. Or not sick of it, I get tired of it. I'm like, yeah, I know you can play that character. That's great. Show me something different.
Right.
And that's why I say I do love Jim Carrey. Like, what's the movie Spotless with
Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, that was a total curveball.
Or Truman Show.
And Truman Show is great, because who doesn't feel like they're on the Truman Show?
Those two movies actually have quite in common with The Mask, in that they're all about like living double lives, you know, or not. It's like, you know, that movie came out, The Mask came out in the early days of the internet, when people were able to kind of present themselves differently on one platform than they did in their real life, and they could, you know, introduce themselves to a whole world of people that would never actually know them. And, you know, they could...
You should have brought the Truman Show. That,
you know, maybe next time I will.
You should, because that is a great...
I love that movie.
That's so relevant.
I get pushback on that. People are like, Truman Show, it's kind of boring. And I'm like, I think it's brilliant.
No, it's not, if you think about it.
Way ahead of its time.
Who hasn't and won't admit it thought?
Well, especially after watching that movie, I'm like, am I on a TV show? Or, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Am I on a podcast? You know, it's a pretty wild thing. So, The Mask, I can recall, I was probably in like 7th grade when this came out, and for some stupid reason, we had debates in study hall from the trailer, before anybody saw the movie, if he was saying smokin' or spoken. I don't know why I entered my head that he would say spoken. That's not even a phrase. Smoking is like he's smoking hot, but like we debated it endlessly. Like, oh, I'm pretty sure he says spoken. I'm like, yeah. I don't know why, but for some reason, and every time I watch The Mask, it always enters my brain, you know, and being that it's on a VHS, that's why we know this movie so well, because you can watch it over and over and over again.
Exactly.
And now it's on streaming, we watch it over and over again. And that's also how you become super analytical of a movie, because you can watch it over and over again instead of just one shot kind of thing. So in the time that you've talked to me, have you warmed up to The Mask a little bit?
Yes, I think that it was just my older brother ruined it for me, because you just watch what your older brother wants to watch.
Right.
But I appreciate the movie for what it is. I don't say it's a bad movie, but Jim Carrey, just in certain roles, like I don't like Ace Ventura, and I'm also one of those people that don't like Ben Stiller. I liked, what's the movie when he goes to Iceland?
I don't even know that one. What is it?
What's the movie when he goes to Iceland and
anybody
he goes
from the audience help us out?
Oh, it's I'll get back to you, but you should add that.
But I was, because like
coming like
Ben Stiller, also kind of 90s, you know.
It's like the Meet the Fockers thing.
Yeah,
kind of like it's
every
the same thing
character.
every time.
He starts out cool, calm, and collected, and then loses his mind and yells. He's in that episode of Friends where he does the exact same thing.
Yes.
And actually, as on my full-length episodes, it's coming out next month, I did an interview with a actress who's in that episode and utters the line that I love, where she's like gonna leave, she's gonna go back home because she's out on a date with Ross, and Ross keeps trying to catch Ben Stiller's character acting crazy because he's going out with Rachel, and she's like, I don't know, I don't want to wait around waiting for a guy who may or may not scream. And I just love that line so much. And so when I talked to her for my show, that was the first thing I told her about. I was like,
that's great.
Because we in my household have used that line many times. We use lines all the time from movies. I don't know if you do that too.
Oh, absolutely. I thought everyone did.
I think we're probably similar.
Are we best friends?
Same
Did we
age.
just become best friends?
We are, yeah. There's another one right there. But
There's so much room for activities.
Thank you. Do you like guacamole? I heard that somebody went up to John C. Reilly in an airport and asked him if he liked guacamole, and he was like, what? And then he's, oh, okay, yeah, Step Brothers. And I did that. I was at back in March. I went to 90s Con in Hartford. They had a whole convention just of 90s stuff and 90s people. And Omri Katz, who's in Hocus Pocus, he plays Max in Hocus Pocus. He was there, and nobody was at his table at the moment.
They're coming out with a new one.
Yeah, it's on tomorrow night.
Is he going to be on it?
It's going to be on. I hope so. I haven't heard anything about it.
I
but
thought you were friends with him.
I went up to him, and I said a line from Hocus Pocus to him. I went, "You got any cash? Hollywood," from when he's in the graveyard with Jay and Ice. And it took him a minute. He's like, oh, yeah. But like, because our generation, I think you and I are probably the same age group, we talk in movie quotes.
Yeah.
Because we watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer over and over again. We watched movies over and over again. And it's just embedded in us, so that like in a situation, we'll say things like, there's so much room for activities.
I don't know which way I'm holding it. That it's very nostalgic for a lot of us growing up in certain, like Dawson's Creek for me, or like Gilmore Girls. Like I remember listening to one of the actors, and she's like, honestly, I don't remember much. So when people come up and quote things to me, I'm like, it's endearing, but like I don't remember because I just performed it that day. And
exactly. They're the only ones that have that perspective on it.
Yeah.
Millions of people see it from through a screen and they watch it over and over again. But a lot of, even like Tom Hanks, he's like, I never watch my movies. He's like, I make the movie, that's what I do for a living, then I forget about it.
Yeah.
And very rarely is somebody gonna get him to repeat his Forrest Gump lines because he's done with it. He's moved on. And they did take care in the movie and in the book, but the movie especially, to make it look legit.
Yeah.
Like they used computer graphics to just the same way the Mask used computer graphics to make it look like he was actually falling out of a building and bouncing around the room. And both those movies came out at the same time period of that mid-90s, getting to know how computers can enhance movies.
Oh, yeah.
Not just make the movie through a computer like they do now, but actually use them fully. I found something cool about Forrest Gump is that the Vietnam scenes were filmed literally across the street from his scenes of his mother's house.
Yes, I just actually learned that.
On that Netflix show, right? The Movies That Made Us?
No, I looked it up on, I don't know.
Or you had the director's cut, so they probably talked about it in that.
Yeah.
I love that movie magic kind of stuff. It's like Saving Private Ryan was in Ireland.
I did that with Across the Universe, too, the Beatles movie. I did that with, because I wanted to see how they try to create a story out of the music. You should do a podcast just on movies. Jeez.
Oh, we do, yeah.
Like historical accuracy of movies.
There is so much to say about that, to be honest. And
I know. I was just telling them, I'm like, I don't normally watch movies like the Jeffrey Dahmer things.
I've heard about that coming out. Yeah.
I won't watch it. Instead, I will look up myself what happened because I can't handle it.
So, what I have to say about that, and I always reiterate it to my students. I say, movies about history are good and well, and if you can learn something about history through the movie, fine. But they're more of a document of the time period in which they were made than they are of what they're about.
The fact.
So, why did they want to make Forrest Gump in the mid-90s? Well, it's because that generation that they were getting to be middle-aged and older, and it was nostalgia. That's what they wanted. Or the movie Glory, which is my all-time favorite history movie. It was made in 1988. Why would you tell that story in 1988? What's going on in the 80s that you feel that this story is about? Yeah, that of all the stories from the past that you can tell, you tell this one in the time. I think that's
Gone with the Wind.
Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect
1939,
example.
the Great Depression. People are feeling how hard it is.
That would have been well received 20 years earlier.
Right. Like they would not have. Gone with the Wind is actually a hugely popular movie. At least it was for a while in Japan. Scarlett O'Hara is a icon in Japan because what she represents. So after World War II, the Japanese were occupied by the army, just the same way that the Confederate States were occupied by the army, and so many people had to struggle to make their way back from nothing, just like Scarlett's story did. And so, of all things, that she's actually a huge figure for Japanese people, at least for a little while. I don't know if that's still true, but in the 90s at least.
Historical pieces for movies, I think, are great because it gives something for people to kind of, not relate necessarily like I was in that era, but like human nature continues to repeat itself.
Yeah.
So we have the same challenges, people being picked on growing up. Mm-hmm. You know.
And you can identify with it.
Yeah, the girl you're in love with went off. Like,
right.
You know.
And back to the mask. You know, the good guy, right? The nice guy finishes last unless he's willing to take on a totally different persona and prove himself. I feel like there's another story like that too. Austin Powers, right? The second one where he loses his mojo and then he finds out that he didn't have to have his mojo all along to get the girl.
It's all in you.
The 90s are just full of it, right?
Yeah.
All those lessons. Because we were bumping up in the end of not only the century, but the millennium. And so I feel like in the 90s, everybody was just trying to pack in as much media as we could about the previous 2,000 years. You know, we're like, let's get it done because, you know, big changes are about to come. We're going to have flying cars in no time, and let's make sure all of our stories are in there. We got to get The Mask done. We got to get Ace Ventura and Forrest Gump, and then we're good. Now we can enter the 2000s, you know?
Yep. Yeah. You got to have some comic relief, a little bit of self-reflection.
Right.
Some history, not exactly accurate.
You mean The Mask didn't happen?
I'm sure as a teacher, one of our favorite pastimes is to check the historical accuracy.
Yes. There's a great book called Past Imperfect, which has movies about history, and it is kind of like critiqued by historians. And they go in chronological order of the movie's topic. So the first movie that they cover is Jurassic Park, because it's set, you know, the animals are billions of years old.
Yeah.
And so it's the scientist from Harvard, Gould, that writes the piece about how accurate the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park were, and then they move on from there.
Yeah.
And so like gladiators in there, and like all and so you have a historian write about here's what actually happened, here's how close the movie was in representing that, and Grapes of Wrath is in there.
Yeah.
All those stories. So it's like, Past Imperfect is a definite cool book to read. Yeah. And as a former teacher, you would definitely want to pick that up. So thank you so much for coming back here. This is the EPS Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to what you've heard so far. Short episodes like this one, which are products of my EPS Podcast Live exhibits, will be coming out on Tuesdays this season, while longer episodes, deeper dives into subjects, are posted on Thursdays. If you like what you hear, consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/EPS Podcast. Follow the show on social media, including YouTube, and especially on Instagram. I look forward to you tuning in again to the EPS Podcast, where everything is a primary source.